The Confederacy entered the American Civil War with advantages in military leadership, morale, and home-ground defense. Yet despite early successes, the South ultimately collapsed under the weight of poor strategy, political miscalculations, and internal contradictions. While Union victories shaped history, many of the South's own blunders helped seal its fate. Here are the top 10 Confederate blunders that critically weakened their war effort. 1. Invading the North twice. Blunder. Lee's invasions of Maryland 1862 and Pennsylvania 1863. Why it failed. Robert E. Lee's bold attempts to bring the war into the North backfired at Antietam and Gettysburg. These offensives stretched Confederate supply lines and resulted in devastating losses, especially at Gettysburg, which became a turning point in the war. The invasions cost the South irreplaceable troops and shattered their aura of invincibility. 2. Underestimating the Union's industrial power. Blunder. Believing the North would tire before using its full resources. Why it failed. Southern leaders assumed the North's industrial might wouldn't translate into sustained military commitment. They believed the war would be short. Instead, the Union built ironclads, railroads, factories, and massive armies that overwhelmed the Confederacy's limited capacity to keep pace. 3. Failing to arm enslaved people sooner. Blunder. Refusing to enlist black soldiers until it was too late. Why it failed. The Confederacy's rigid commitment to slavery blinded it to the military potential of black soldiers. Only in 1865, months before defeat, did it authorize arming the enslaved. Meanwhile, over 180,000 black men served in Union forces, tipping the manpower balance in the North's favor. 4. Overconfidence after early victories. Blunder. Assuming the Union lacked the will to fight a long war. Why it failed. Confederate leaders interpreted early wins, like First Bull Run and Chancellorsville, as signs that the North would eventually give up. This led to complacency and missed opportunities to press their advantage or seek diplomatic solutions before the tide turned. 5. Lack of a unified military strategy. Blunder. States' rights over central military planning. Why it failed. President Jefferson Davis struggled to control his generals, especially in the Western theater. Confederate leaders like Braxton Bragg and Joseph E. Johnston often acted independently or incompetently, while the Union eventually unified under Grant and coordinated effectively across multiple fronts. 6. Alienating Europe with the slavery issue. Blunder. Relying on European intervention that never came. Why it failed. The South hoped Britain and France, dependent on cotton, would support their cause. But the Emancipation Proclamation reframed the war as a moral fight against slavery, making it politically impossible for European nations to support the Confederacy. 7. Failure to hold the Mississippi River. Blunder. Losing Vicksburg in the Western theater. Why it failed. The Confederacy didn't adequately reinforce or coordinate defenses in the Mississippi Valley. Grant's campaign to seize Vicksburg divided the Confederacy and gave the Union complete control of the river, isolating Texas, Arkansas, and Louisiana. 8. Mismanaging Southern infrastructure. Blunder. Poor use of railroads and supply lines. Why it failed. While the North rapidly industrialized and laid new rail lines, the South struggled with mismatched gauges, undermaintained tracks, and insufficient coordination. This logistical failure made it difficult to move troops and supplies efficiently, especially in later years. 9. Appointing incompetent leaders. Blunder. Keeping generals like Braxton Bragg in command. Why it failed. Despite repeated failures and internal dissent, Confederate President Jefferson Davis stubbornly retained weak generals like Bragg, who bungled key battles like Chickamauga. Meanwhile, Union leadership improved dramatically with figures like Grant and Sherman rising to prominence. 10. Not adapting to total war. Blunder. Clinging to traditional warfare and underestimating Union resolve. Why it failed. The Confederacy never fully adapted to the North's strategy of total war, especially during Sherman's march to the sea. Sherman's scorched earth tactics devastated Southern morale and infrastructure, demonstrating that the Union would stop at nothing to restore the nation. Conclusion. The South's worst enemy was itself. While the Confederacy faced overwhelming odds, many of its most damaging defeats were self-inflicted. Strategic overreach, political inflexibility, and failure to mobilize all available resources doomed its chances of independence. The war wasn't just lost on the battlefield, it was lost in boardrooms, backrooms, and misguided ideologies. These blunders serve as lasting lessons in leadership, planning, and the consequences of failing to adapt in times of crisis.